number one, Disney's ESPN, rated number one by fans, distributors, advertisers. Disney's iconic parks, known affectionately as the happiest places on earth. And who could forget trying to find that frozen doll last Christmas? In the next few moments, my colleagues and I will tell you about our findings on this multinational mass media corporation, the Walt Disney Company. My name is Kathleen. I'm joined today with the funny Zach, Ken, and Connie. We're here to recommend a buy of a great Disney with a price target of $110, which represents a 21% upside from the closing price of $90.96 since January 30th. Our recommendation stems from our strong conviction in Disney's core competitive advantage, namely it is a global leader in premium content and driven by its unrivaled portfolio of brands and franchises. Number two, it will continually add to that portfolio with its upcoming slate of movie films, catalyzed by the recent acquisitions in Lucasfilms and also Marvel. Last, its key differentiating factor is actually its exceptional ability to monetize IP through its various business segments. And this is why we believe Disney will command premium pricing and will be an attractive short-term and long-term investment. To understand how Disney creates value, you first have to consider segments. By revenue, we have the media networks, parks and resorts, studio entertainment, consumer products, and interactive. My colleague Ifani will talk about that acquisition.
So now you have an understanding of what Disney's major business segments are, but how does the company create value across its segments within their respective industries? In short, Disney creates value for shareholders by building and monetizing mega brands, with the value creation process beginning with premium content such as major motion pictures. So, in short, Disney, although box office revenues only represent a small portion of its overall revenues, it has a large impact on its value creation pipeline. Disney relies on its vertically and horizontally integrated business model, as well as the synergies therein, to take a box office hit and piggyback off its success through branded TV content, merchandising, as well as theme park attendance. For instance, Cars generated $1 billion in revenues at the box office, as well as $10 billion in estimated retail sales since 2006, and also spurred the opening of Cars Land at Disney California Adventure. We believe that consumer spending, discretionary income, as well as media viewing habits will be the primary industry drivers of entertainment. And our outlook on consumer spending and discretionary income especially is positive. We expect that Disney, with 80% of its revenues being domestic, will benefit from an improving U.S. economy as labor market gains and low oil prices put money back in consumers' hands. So we looked at a couple economic indicators. Hiring gains have been widespread, averaging about $246,000 per year last year. Consumer spending was up 4.3% in the fourth quarter of last year, a record since 2006, and retail sales were the highest in 3 years. So we believe that Disney is well positioned to benefit from this, and largely not only will consumers be able to spend more, which will boost parks and theater attendance, merchandising sales, as well as other retail sales, but consumers, we found in an Accenture survey last year, although they're less willing to pay more for content overall, are willing to pay more specifically for premium content. So this is important because looking forward, we think this means that Disney's portfolio of its brands and franchises and continued portfolio will command higher value. As the content saying goes, content is king, and we believe Disney is the king of content. Furthermore, as consumers increasingly cut their cable subscriptions, we believe that despite this, there will be average pricing pressure in the industry, but despite this, live sports are here to stay. And Disney, through its position in ESPN, will be able to weather the storm. Like, for example, all of ESPN's competitors and networks have been seeing ratings erosion, while ESPN last year set all-time records with its college football playoffs. So this commands Disney a large pricing and negotiating power. For example, it was recently able to seal a deal with Dish to offer Disney as part of a smaller cable package for their customers. Now, we see significant value in Disney's premium position in the sports entertainment market to protect it from any downside risk associated with TV cable cutting, making Disney the best. So now we'll pass to Zach.
Thank you, Fanny. So now that we've talked about where Disney is, let's look at the landscape. Let's dive into the company and look at it financially. Each of the segments contains vastly different drivers, so for that reason, in building our revenue model, we looked at each individual segment to forecast that. First, with media networks, we see two main factors affecting Disney going forward. First, the continued all-around success of ESPN to capture advertising revenues and affiliate fees, providing a defensive nature for Disney. And the second is the impending presence of ESPN and ABC OTT services, which will help sustain affiliate fees into perpetuity for Disney. Parks and resorts is the segment that is most correlated to the macroeconomy, so we expect increasing per capita guest spending at the parks and at the hotels as consumer discretionary income increases. Secondly, the opening of Disneyland Shanghai will be a boom for the company as it continues to expand Disney's presence in the world's second largest economy. Studio will be Disney's fastest growing segment as it retains the premier movie slate across the industry, with Star Wars, Marvel, and a host of Pixar films coming out in the next few years. And this drives management's ability to create franchises and drive incremental revenue throughout the company, most benefiting consumer products, which can leverage the studio's success, continue to push products to the consumer in the aftermarket. And we believe that a lot of our assumptions and beliefs for the studio go hand in hand with success for consumer products as management continues to build franchises. So for overall, taking these four segments together, we believe that Disney can grow its revenues at a 5.3% annualized rate, with revenues topping $60 billion by 2017. All this together leads to increased operational efficiencies and leverage, driving broad-scale margin expansion. And out of the three segments, media, parks, and consumer, it is studio that will help lead this margin expansion due to the high degree of operating leverage in the film industry. So taking all this together, what Disney has been able to do has had a tremendous ability to convert its earnings into cash flow, with CapEx representing about 37% of cash flow from operations and buybacks about 50%. We believe that this buybacks figure is a percentage that can and will be sustained going forward and help us drive our share buyback projections over the next 5 years, going from $5 billion this year to $6.7 over the next by 2019. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Ken to talk about how we took all this information to get to our price target of $110.
Thank you, Zach. I'll now be talking about both of our valuation methodologies used to calculate our target price of 110. So for our DCF, we broke down our model into 5 parts, each projected over a 5-year projection period, discounted back at each of the specific or individual segment discount rates. We used our assumptions to fuel our model. For example, media, we took more of a conservative approach, assuming that although ESPN is going to do relatively well moving forward, that's going to be offset by a decline in broadcast. Similarly, if you look at parks and resorts, again, we feel that domestically, Disney's going to do relatively well with an increase in discretionary income and park attendance. That's going to be overshadowed by their exposure in the international market. For studio and for consumer, we feel we are more bullish as we expect those two segments to benefit the most or capitalize the most from the IP and synergistic effects as outlined in our thesis. And then for interactive, well, we just don't feel Disney's going to be throwing that many resources into it moving forward over the next couple of years, and so there again, we took more of a conservative approach. I would also like to note that for our terminal values, we looked at both the Gordon growth and the multiples method. We averaged those two methods for each of the segments to come up with our terminal value for each segment. In addition to that, for our discount rates or our WACs, we looked at the industry levered betas and the industry target capital structures to calculate our discount rate for each segment. With that, I would also like to turn your attention to the comparable companies analysis. We focus on primarily 2 screening criteria, industry classification and the business model. Then we looked at a range of EV to LTM EBITDAs for each of the segments, focusing more so on that 75th percentile. Because this is a sum of the parts analysis, these are more pure play comps, and so in order to justify that premium that we feel that Disney deserves, we thought that this was a fair assumption to make. So taking those multiples, and we were able to compute the implied enterprise values for each segment. And if you look here, here's some of the comps that we used in our analysis. So taking both the comparable companies analysis and the DCF, we yielded a target price of about 110. I'll now pass it off to Connie to talk to you guys about business and investments.
We've identified 2 types of risk for our investment, macroeconomic and operational. On the macroeconomic side, a lower consumer spending would negatively impact Disney's business segments. However, as we've seen through consumer preferences, they're willing to pay more for premium content, and we think that Disney is well positioned to retain their customers during a down market cycle, particularly for the media and studio segments. Also, with the rise of pay TV cord cutting, Disney has been positioning themselves to add more over-the-top cable services like ESPN, Marvel, and Star Wars. Next, for operational risks, we believe that a poor box office performance is unlikely given that they're releasing a greater number of films that are aided by the blockbuster sequels. And secondly, though there may be a higher cost of sports rights, Disney only has 1 contract left to be renegotiated, which is the Big Ten, and they've also been demonstrating the ability to pass this cost on to their advertisers. And lastly, though the performance of Shanghai Disneyland may be slightly uncertain, this would only account for about 4.6% of their total parks and resorts revenue. In conclusion, we recommend a buy on the Walt Disney Company with a price target of $110. We believe that Disney has a unrivaled portfolio of premium content, a robust pipeline of films,
Shot clock goes on.
Yeah, can you go to your evaluation slide? Yeah, this one.
How do you pick your terminal growth?
The terminal?
Yeah, how do you pick your terminal
Yeah,
growth
so
rate?
we looked at the NTM. Actually, you could probably see it better if you go to our appendix. Can you flip through to the appendix? Basically, we looked at the EV to NTM EBITDAs for each of the segments. So again, we looked at our peers and we focused on that 75th percentile. We feel that that was the most appropriate method, or the most appropriate method in determining what Disney's going to be trading at in the future.
I don't know if I understand the 75th percentile, I'm sorry.
Oh, so in terms of like why we use it or how we calculate it?
How calculated?
Oh, so basically we looked at the range, you look at, the segments or the peers. Okay, I'm gonna pull that up there. We looked, what's the peers? There you go. We looked at the peers for media networks, for example, and of course we have our median. So the 75th percentile is the 75th quartile within this range. So for the EV to LTM EBITDA, this is basically the average between the 13.7 and the 10.9 in this case.
So you're giving them a multiple or whatever you're using based on the 75th percentile.
Right.
So essentially, you're saying Disney is gonna be the better performer across all
Right.
these 5 different
And again, the
segments.
reason we did that was because this is some of the parts. We didn't think that some of the parts was going to capture that synergistic effect that we thought that Disney deserved, and so that's why we went with a higher multiple instead of looking at maybe the median.
Well, let me just to follow up on that. Historically, has Disney been in the 75th percentile across these 5 dimensions compared to their competitors? Right?
Not in interactive, which
Oh, it's such a small
is a small one, but for media networks and for studio, they do relatively well.
And as a whole, as a company, they've always traded at a premium.
Right.
Yeah.
The first thing you said today was about the quality of their assets. Do you have any idea what their assets in terms of the film library and then the attendant revenues that come from products related to those, that sort of thing, what those assets are worth?
Yeah.
For example, just saying, we were going to use Toy Story as an example. We have domestic total box office. We also break it down in terms of DVDs, merchandise, publishing, stores, interactive. These are all the reasons why just say one studio itself obviously won't be making all those billions and billions of dollars, but if they add it along with other segments like you mentioned, it flows through and they're able to capitalize on that, which is why we believe they have the ability to exceptionally monetize intellectual property. And Toy Story is a really good example, and Frozen is a good example. And Ifan, you mentioned Cars.
In your models, you've got for each segment growth rates. How did you calculate the expected growth rates for each one?
For a lot of that, so we looked at various reports of equity research and what analysts are saying on that, and we kind of look at everything, took a step back and see where do we see each industry going and where do we feel more bullish based on that, and running different scenarios based on that. So just looking at what analysts across the street are saying and kind of tempering that with, okay,
About Disney or about that segment?
about each segment, Disney as a whole and within each segment.
But Disney's growth rate isn't the same as the segment growth rate, though?
No, it's a blended based on how all the revenues add up.
And they tend to be 75% style and those growth rates as well.
Yeah. And one thing we feel, just to use ESPN as an example, there's a lot of uncertainty about the cable industry. Are people going to cord cut? Are people going to continue to be cable due to economic reasons or due to content watching reasons? Using ESPN, we see that provides a very defensive nature for Disney because ESPN owns a monopoly on the sports industry, and it really protects that. It gives Disney a lot of leverage to be able to go to the cable providers and say, well, if we don't get a rate that we want or is sustainable, we're going to pull ESPN. So that really allows them. That's just one example, at least for media networks, that allows them to be able to justify a growth rate that we believe.
Because your growth rates are all fairly much higher than GDP growth, right? So essentially, Disney's going to capture more and more, right?
Yeah, we believe so.
Is that, you factor in the international versus domestic in that argument as well?
Yes, to the point Disney, you're saying Disney captures 80% of the revenue from domestic, and most of that is through studio box office and through the parks. So with media, we say that's all in the US, but we captured some of that and kind of tempered, and we looked at domestic versus international for parks in terms of creating a top line growth rate.
So the sum of the parts is a buy. What would be the catalyst, get us there in 1 year? Because I mean, is the market thinking that the company has some inefficiencies right now? That's why it's the prices evolve.
We think there's two main reasons why. Go ahead.
I think that one catalyst that we look at, for example, is sort of, we believe that the trends happening in the digital industry right now and online consumption are going to happen sooner than I think the market realizes, which is going to position Disney through its premium content to command higher value in terms of relative to its peers. So that's kind of how we look at it.
And I would just also like to note too that we did this valuation at the day we turned it in January 30th. And you look at the price now, which is 105. Most of that value has actually been realized.
Through multiple expansions.
Exactly.
And earnings growth. Twins earnings growth over the first quarter.
Wait, it's February, they only released fourth quarter, because
They
they
released first quarter. So their fiscal year ends at the end of September. And so they released first quarter, first week of fourth quarter. Yeah.
So you can seem particularly enamored by the growth in interactive.
So we see that as, management said they don't foresee or bring a lot of resources into that. It's one way that's kind of complements a lot of their IP that they have. And we see that as something that's going to continue to grow along, depending on games that interactive releases, whether it's popular with children. We don't see that as a major driver in any way, upside or downside overall. So because Disney doesn't believe a lot more in CapEx into their supporting that divisions, we see it as something that's there.
So they're not necessarily made. Do
Yeah.
you see Disney's growth faster than GDP as a result of growth in its segments being faster than GDP, or Disney gaining market share of Disney segments? Or some of it?
I think.
Yeah, I think that especially in studio, we believe that it's going to increase its market share. We believe that media networks, as well as the industry is adversely affected by cord cutting, will really increase its market share. And I think that we kind of capture that in our growth assumptions in terms of top line growth as well.
I'd say it's a mix of both. Segments growing faster than GDPs are growing and continue to expand into new areas, and also Disney continue to capture share. So I think it's a mix of both.
So you see it as a premier company in the industry.
Yes.
And we got the data that even in trends when there was the Great Recession, people still went to Disneyland, people still watch the movies, and it's something we see going forward, that they'd be the one that people go to, even if they have to not go to see the second movie that they want to see what Disney has to offer.
How important to your growth story is Shanghai? Is Disney Shanghai?
Yeah, so Shanghai Disney, we looked into it. There was analysts were all over the place. No one knows it's going to be a flop or it's going to be a win. So what we did was we basically figured out what would happen if it completely flopped. And we put 0 as their revenue. And what happened is it only affected our price target by, if you like 1%, at 1 point something. And I mean, obviously it's only about 4.7% revenue going forward. So assuming it flopped, we put a 0 in it, it affected our price target a little bit 1%. But if it does well, maybe the market will overreact and Disney will see something.
What is the biggest swing factor in your price targets? Tested sensitivity to that, and tested sensitivity to other things. What is what's the biggest variable?
So ESPN, it commands such a large percentage as a whole of the company, and dramatic underperformance at ESPN would drive a lot of the price down. But I think the major driver behind that would be consumers. Okay, I don't want to pay for cable. I'm not going to go out and buy cable, and I don't want to watch sports because I can find a way to watch it online. But we don't see that happening because sports is the one thing, one piece of content that you have to watch live, and the consumers are always want to watch live. So we see that as, while it is the biggest risk, we believe that it's very defensive for Disney because of just the nature of what sports content is.
Well, the other risk is the NFL asks for enormous amount of money from ESPN, right? I mean, there's all margin growth.
Yes.
And if any of the parks and resorts would go underwater, that'd be bad too. That would be a killer.
Literally.
Anything happens there, who knows?
see